If you live in warm season lawn territory, then sprigs are something that a lot of people don't know exist. You can buy sprigs or seed or sod. Sprigs you can actually grow yourself if you already have some grass somewhere. Let me show you how amazing they are and how you find them in your lawn. All warm season grasses can be grown from sprigs. Warm season grass, this right here is a thin early spring warm season grass. This is buffalo grass. But what we see growing over the edge of the sidewalk, this is what we call a stolon. Most areas, you come by with an edger and you trim this off. That's what makes the entire sidewalk look clean, like it does over there. If you don't edge, then the entire edge of your sidewalk, the grass starts creeping over with all of these stolons. What most people don't realize, however, is the stolons, once we cut them, become a sprig. And each one of these little points on the stolon where grass is starting to grow out, we call these nodes, each one of these spots can reroot down into bare dirt if they're sitting on bare dirt, even if we clip them off. Look over here on a soil territory, and you'll find the exact same thing. Here is what I'm going to call a mother plant, and the stolon grows out over the dirt. And each one of these areas, see it? That doesn't want to move. That doesn't want to move. That one hasn't rooted down yet. So soon that will root down. But right now that one has rooted and that one has rooted. This stolon re-roots down at the nodes. And that's how warm season grasses spread. If I were to take a stolon like this that's growing out over the sidewalk or the road and pluck it, every single one of the nodes can still re-root down onto bare dirt so long as they're touching. Now, if I take this stolon and I stick it down on bare dirt, just like here, nothing is going to re-root. And the reason for that is nothing's actually touching the soil. You have to literally get each node, or at least a majority, or at least a minority of nodes touching the soil for them to re-root down. And of course, the stolon, or the sprig in this case, needs to be super fresh. Now, I just plucked this seconds ago, so this is super fresh. So how do I get this to re-root down into the soil? I need to make sure that it is weighted down. And I'm going to use a little bit of topsoil or peat moss to do this. If you run off to any hardware store or garden supply store or big box store, you're going to be able to find potting soil, raised bed soil, or planting soil, or something else. You could buy bags of that, or you could buy bags of something like this, peat moss. Peat moss retains a lot of moisture when you put it down. It's not exactly soil, it's more of a planting or a soil amendment or top dressing, but it holds moisture. So you buy a bag of this and put it on top of it, and it's gonna keep everything moist and weight it down. And it's gonna allow those sprigs to root into the peat moss and into the soil underneath. Now, another option is to literally just grab a little hand shovel, or a bigger one, and you come over to your bare spot. I'm going to move my sprig out of the way. So here's my bare spot right there. I'm just going to literally dig up a chunk of it. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my sprig. I'm going to use this one right here. That's the more substantial one. It looks like this sprig split into two different areas. I'm going to take some soil, rumble it right on top. There you go. It literally only took 2 hands to do in about 10 seconds. All you got to do is just cover up that one little node. I'm going to take this little chunk, and I'm just going to put that right there. I'm going to put it on that node right there. So now I've got at least 2, maybe 3 nodes sitting in there, maybe 4 or 5. I don't know. It depends. And now at this point, I've got at least 5 nodes. I don't know, I lost count. 4 or 5 nodes or so are sitting under the dirt. I'm just going to give this a little bit of water, and this whole thing is just going to start regrowing again. Here, I'm going to cover that up so it's not flopping. This literally seems crude and almost brutal, especially when you pan back, like I'm just making the ground look bad. But this is what we're going to call a sprig. It's not what we're going to call. This is a sprig. And these sprigs re-root down So now I'm going to have this little sprig plant is going to root down and fill in this area over time. It won't take all that long during the growing season, but it does need some water. It's interesting as the water actually weights everything down and kind of really squishes it into the dirt so it stays there. But at this point, I could clean up this ground and make it a little bit flatter, or I just leave it alone. It doesn't really matter. Eventually, all of that sprig is going to keep growing in all different directions, down, up, left, right, forward, backward, inside and out. And the whole area is going to fill in. What's even cooler is that was just one sprig. So I've been letting all of the stolons grow out over the sidewalk and the curb next to the street for the past handful of weeks or so. I'm going to literally go with scissors and cut every single one of them, and I'm going to put them down on all of the bare spots, or at least the thin spots. So I'm going to end up having a nice clean edge around the sidewalk and the road, and every single stolon that I trim is going to go into a thin spot. I'm going to cover the whole thing up with some peat moss, and then I'm going to come back in not too much time, I don't know, a couple weeks or so, give or take, and I'll show you just how impressive this process is. This is literally a no-brainer. If you do live in a warm season territory, let your sidewalks get overgrown, harvest the sprigs, harvest those stolons growing over the edges, throw them into your bare spots, cover them up with a little bit of potting soil or native soil, and then just give them some water. You can have a much better lawn way faster than you can imagine. All right, I'm going to do the same thing with the other sprigs along the sidewalk side, the other stolons. I'm going to clip them, which turns them into sprigs. And I'm going to put them down on these thin spots. Eventually, all of these areas would fill in on their own, but putting these sprigs down is going to speed the process up so much. I'll give you some after shots here. Just give it a little bit. All right, I just added more sprigs on the back patch there. How long is this going to take? I don't know, but I really think that after 14 days, it's going to be obvious the difference. I decided to keep a control so that you can see the difference between what I just did and what I didn't do after 14 days. There goes a car. Bye, car. All right, so this area was really thin. I had poor buffalo grass germination last fall, so I just put some of the sprigs right here, covered up with the peat moss, put some water on it. Earlier in the video, I did it right here up close so you could watch. This is the one spot that I decided to just leave. So see there's my water meter. There's the spot. And as you can tell, we've got one stolon going this way. Other than that, we've got one stolon going this way, but it's not rooted down. So this spot will eventually fill in, but I didn't put any sprigs there. So let's compare how fast that fills in over the next 14 days compared to this area with a whole bunch of sprigs that I just cut from the edge of my sidewalk, and this area with a whole bunch of sprigs that I just cut from the edge of my road. And just like that, 13 days have gone by. Let's go take a look at the sprigs that I put down in the parkway strip, look at them up close, from far away, things like that. So from far away, I'd say everything is still looking pretty good. I got my original spot over there, looks darker. That's largely because we still see dirt and there's peat moss on top of it, which has a different color. Same thing goes for over here. Let's start in this zone. So 13 days ago, that was largely just dirt. And now we can see that some of these sprigs are still green. That is obviously still growing right there. I bet it's rooted down. Throughout this whole area, that's a sprig I put down. Can't tell for sure which ones are. See, like that's a sprig that went down. That one never took, so they don't all take. In fact, there's a handful here like that. Oh, nope. Right there. This wants to move everywhere except for right there. That rooted down. It's not putting on any growth, green growth yet, but it's rooted. Nowhere else has, however. Still got some green coming up here. Overall, there's a lot of new rooting taking place here, and I don't want to be abrasive or aggressive trying to prove it to you on camera because I want the grass to grow. If it has rooted down, which I believe a lot of this has, it is barely rooted down. So I don't want to damage the baby roots. Now, as we look up, let's go to the other spot. This is the spot where I got my shovel involved. There's a sprig that never took, blew in the wind. There's a handful of them over here that never took. Clean those up. That's why you can't just rely on one sprig. Take a bunch, put a bunch down. Some of them will take, some of them won't. Perhaps I just didn't cover it very well right here. Also, we park our car here, so we might have scuffed this area up with our feet somewhere along the way. But this area was primarily where I did the digging and covering up with soil and peat moss. And you can see in here, we've got a lot of green going on. I see stolons on top of the ground, and certainly there's some under the ground as well because I buried them in. Same thing goes for right there. All three of these primary areas are really starting to look good. Of course, I'm saying good in the greater sense of good. The sprigs are taking, therefore the grass is going to be spreading and thickening out in these spots. Now here's the control spot. Get the shadow out of the way. Remember, this is the stolon I pointed out earlier in the video. It's still there. Here's this one right here. Looks like that one's going off that way now. But there's still pretty much nothing here. Still just a big dirt spot. Now, over time, as I said before, all of these stolons, they'll keep going. Here's another one coming this way. It'll all fill in. But it just takes a lot more time. And if you don't want to spend the time, cut yourself some sprigs, fill in the spaces manually, or air quotes, manually. Remember, I didn't actually put anything on there. I didn't put any fertilizer. I just watered. So I put the sprigs down, put the peat moss on top of it, watered it. I think I watered it every day for 3 days, roughly. And then I just stopped. And that's what's happened. So now that everything seems to be filling in nicely, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of fertilizer to it, probably this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. I'm not going to put anything heavy on it, just a little bit of liquid goodies. That's going to help those stolons continue spreading left and right. Buffalo grass doesn't need a lot of fertilizer, so I'm not going to give it a lot. And if you're curious just how good this could look like over the course of an entire season, let me go show you one more thing before we wrap up this video. You see this pot right here? This is a pot of Bermuda grass. This pot, I haven't cut it because I've been letting it go. I want to see all of these seed heads pop up. But this pot came from Sprigs that I harvested in that yard last fall. I did the exact same thing to this pot that I did to those spots over there. Sprigs, cover it with peat moss, give it some water. They root down and everything grows like crazy. Check this out. I'm going to tip it over. Big old spike. There's roots at the bottom of this pot. Pot is like a foot deep or more. In 6 months from Sprigs, this pot is completely saturated with roots over a foot deep. Sprigs work. Harvest your own. It's hard to fail with this technique. Make sure to watch this video up here in the corner if you want to actually see the video where I made this pot from Sprigs.